Only Trump remains. First, Ted Cruz, now John Kasich exit the race for the Republican nomination. No finger pointing. President Obama promises more help for the people of Flint, Michigan struggling with contaminated water. Raging wildfire. Tens of thousands of Canadians evacuate as flames threaten their entire town. And the Good Shepherd. Pope Francis uses the parable to illustrate God's mercy at today's general audience. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, May 4th, 2016. Donald Trump signals a new phase in his campaign. He is now looking for a running mate with experience governing. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick. We begin team coverage with Lauren Ashburn, Chief White House Correspondent and Political Director.
Brian, after a crushing loss in Indiana, Ted Cruz drops out of the race for president. That makes Donald Trump the presumptive Republican presidential nominee. Indiana voters also picked Bernie Sanders, but despite his win, Hillary Clinton is still on track to win the Democratic nomination. But now for the big news. It has been 24 hours filled with game-changing political news, and now Ohio Governor John Kasich says he's out. He dropped out late this afternoon, thanking all of them who have helped him on his journey, especially those in the Buckeye State.
I cannot tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity that you've given me to be a leader in this state.
Kasich cited his faith, saying, quote, "As I suspend my campaign today, I have renewed faith, deeper faith, that the Lord will show me the way forward and fulfill the purpose of my life." He is the last Republican to drop out. The warning came this morning when Kasich canceled a press event and a campaign meeting in the D.C. area. Trump told CNN that he would be interested in vetting Kasich for vice president. And when asked in the past, Kasich laughed off the idea. Trump's sweeping win in Indiana forces the establishment to get behind the man they're now calling the presumptive nominee. And last night's victory by Bernie Sanders gives him political momentum in a race that he's not likely to win.
We left it all on the field in Indiana. We gave it everything we've got. But the voters chose another path. We are suspending our campaign.
Ted Cruz, I don't know if he likes me or if he doesn't like me, but he is one hell of a competitor. He is a tough, smart guy. And he has got an amazing future.
Once again, Donald Trump claims victory, sweeping the Indiana Republican primary.
Never have been through anything like this, but it's a beautiful thing to watch and a beautiful thing to behold.
Now called the presumptive nominee, he praised his former rivals and urged the party to unite.
We want to bring unity to the Republican Party.
Bernie Sanders winning Indiana's Democratic primary.
Let me just take this opportunity to thank the people of Indiana for giving us a great upset victory. I understand that Secretary Clinton thinks that this campaign is over. I've got some bad news for her.
But Hillary Clinton still dominates the delegate race, and she's on track to win the Democratic nomination.
My campaign is about breaking down all the barriers that stand in the way of individual Americans getting ahead and in the way of our country getting ahead.
Here's the delegate count. Hillary Clinton has 2,205. Bernie Sanders trails quite dramatically with 1,400. On the Republican side, the magic number is, on the Democratic side, the magic number is 2,383. Now, in the GOP race, Donald Trump has 1,053. He needs that magic number of 1,237 to be officially declared the winner. After Trump's acceptance speech, the head of the Republican National Committee tweeted, "Donald Trump will be the presumptive GOP nominee. We all need to unite and focus on defeating Hillary Clinton. #NeverClinton." A new CNN ORC poll finds that Clinton leads Trump 54 to 41%. It's her largest lead since July. Clinton is also more trusted on many issues voters rank as critically important. So what do the latest developments mean to those who are pro-life? Only one candidate, Donald Trump, says he's pro-life, while the two Democrats still in the race support abortion. Jason Calvi joins us from the Washington Hilton, where Secretary Clinton is speaking tonight. Jason.
Yeah, the secretary as well as President Obama will both be speaking, Lauren, at this hotel. It's a gathering of Asians here in Washington, D.C. But Clinton is also fundraising in Washington. She's sharing the stage with actress Eva Longoria, as well as the head of NARAL, Pro-Choice America. Clinton has vowed to protect abortion rights.
I will defend a woman's right to make her own health care decisions. And I'll tell you, I will defend Planned Parenthood against all these partisan attacks.
Years ago, Donald Trump called himself very pro-choice. He says he's now pro-life. On the campaign trail, he's promised to appoint pro-life justices to the Supreme Court and defund Planned Parenthood, even though he says they do good work. Today, a pro-life group says Trump is hiring a veteran pro-lifer as policy director. The president of the Susan B. Anthony List, a group that promotes pro-life candidates, says this about John Ashburn. This is an excellent hire, especially for the pro-life movement and our legislative priorities. He is a smart strategist with deep pro-life roots.
But a recent Never Trump campaign ad said he cannot be trusted on the life issues. But for those looking for a third-party candidate, Libertarian Governor Gary Johnson is pro-choice, and CatholicVote.org is out today saying there really is no viable third-party candidate. They say Clinton must be opposed. Lauren?
Jason Calvi reporting in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much. And coming up later in the broadcast, we'll talk with a political panel about what it means for both parties.
Meanwhile, other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. The U.S. Justice Department says today North Carolina's so-called bathroom law violates federal civil rights laws. It requires people to use public bathrooms based on their biological sex. The Obama administration gives state officials until Monday to confirm they will not comply with or implement that law. Otherwise, North Carolina could lose hundreds of millions of dollars in federal school funding. Defense Secretary Ash Carter warns the fight against ISIS is far from over. Carter is meeting with NATO allies who vow to step up the military campaign against the terrorists. Wyatt Goolsby is here with more.
Brian, Secretary Carter's warning comes just one day after a Navy SEAL was killed while fighting ISIS in Iraq. Carter telling our allies it's a tragic loss, but he says the combat risks are unavoidable.
Petty Officer First Class Charles Keating, a Navy SEAL, was killed while providing advice and assistance for the Peshmerga forces north of Mosul, and we greatly regret his loss.
Secretary Carter identifying the 31-year-old Navy SEAL who died in Iraq Tuesday during a clash against ISIS, also called ISIL. This Kurdish soldier describes how Petty Officer Keating was in this vehicle when it was hit by a rocket. 3 Peshmerga troops were also killed in the fighting. Ultimately, coalition forces prevailed in pushing ISIS back. Keating is the 3rd serviceman to die in Iraq since U.S. forces returned there in 2014. Carter says it's the price American military pay to fight terrorism.
There is risk here. Americans are at risk doing it, but it's necessary. We will defeat ISIL.
Carter and his counterparts from 11 coalition countries met behind closed doors in Germany today. He says the strategy is to help local forces defend their own country.
So we agreed today that we will continue, all of us, to do more to accelerate ISIL's lasting defeat. And we also agreed that all of our friends and allies across the counter-ISIL coalition can and must do more as well.
Secretary Carter has placed a high priority on bringing coalition members together in this military campaign. He told allies this week, quote, "It's important for civilization that we do this. We can do this. We're going to. With your help, it'll go faster." Brian.
Wyatt, thank you. And President Obama visits Flint, Michigan today, talking with people affected by lead-contaminated drinking water. Taking a drink of water to prove it, the president promised Flint's filtered water is okay to drink. While there, he was briefed on the federal response to Flint's crisis. He declared a state of emergency in mid-January and ordered federal aid to supplement state and local efforts. A White House spokesman says the president is troubled that this crisis affects an economically disadvantaged community. Well, classes resume in Detroit public schools today after teachers called out sick for 2 days. They've now been assured they will continue to be paid. Their union, meanwhile, is sparring with lawmakers over a $500 million plan to restructure the district and its huge debt. The union blasting the legislation for blocking existing labor agreements from transferring to that newly created district. The entire population of a Canadian town evacuates as a wildfire engulfs homes, sending ashes raining down on people. More than 80,000 residents of Fort McMurray, Alberta, are ordered to flee as flames continue to move through the city. The wildfire, whipped by unpredictable winds, worsened quickly. Many had little notice to get out. Local leaders are considering an airlift for people with medical issues. Russia plans to boost troop levels along its borders to counter NATO's planned buildup. Russia's defense minister says 2 new divisions will be formed along its western border with Europe. A third will be added along the southern border by the end of the year. U.S. Defense Secretary Ash Carter expressed Monday a deepening worry in the West about Russian military assertiveness. He says NATO is considering establishing a continuous rotation of up to 4,000 troops in the Baltic states and possibly Poland. A surge in fighting in Syria is creating new areas with endless suffering that aid providers cannot reach. That grim assessment from the man who leads a UN task force on humanitarian aid in Syria. He says in the northern city of Aleppo, quote, "The population is bleeding, and nothing is more important than ending the fighting there." Meanwhile, the Russian military says it's withdrawn about 30 aircraft from its base in Syria. The Minneapolis Star-Tribune reports Prince arranged to meet a California doctor for treatment of an addiction to painkillers shortly before his death. A source close to the investigation says it's focused now on a possible drug overdose. The paper reports the doctor was called the day before Prince died, according to the physician's lawyer. The doctor's son, reportedly sent to discuss treatment with the superstar, actually found him unresponsive and called 911. We go back to our political desk now for more analysis of the Indiana primary. Lauren?
Genevieve Wood is a former spokesperson for the Republican National Committee. Bob Cusack, editor-in-chief of The Hill. Welcome to the program.
Good to be here.
John Kasich bowed out this morning. We had a crew at Dulles Airport here in Washington waiting for him, never showed. Is this a surprise? And if so, is it a good thing that he did this now?
I think it was inevitable. I don't think it was too much of a surprise. I thought he'd be in for maybe a few more days, but there was no path for John Kasich. He only won his home state of Ohio. He knew it. The base didn't want him. He basically in every state was battling for second other than Ohio. So this clinches it. Donald Trump is the nominee. As hard as that is to fathom.
For a lot of people
nominee.
to say.
Yes.
I know. There are so many pundits who have said this will never, ever happen. It has divided.
There's a lot of never going around.
Never Trump, never Clinton, never,
right.
never. It has really divided the Republican Party. And as the former communications person, I'm sure you know how difficult it can be to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. What's this going to take?
Well, I think I question how much of the divide is just in Washington among Republican and the establishment and conservative types, and how much of it's really divided out in the country. Because when I talked to a lot of people around the country, yeah, some of them were Trump supporters, some of them were other supporters, but almost all of them said they agreed with that pledge all those candidates took back last fall, that at the end of the day, whoever gets it, we got to get behind them. Not everybody will feel that way, but I think it's good that it's happening now and that this thing did not get to the convention.
Sure. On the Democratic side, it got lost last night that Bernie Sanders won Indiana. Everybody was talking about the presumptive nominee and what's happening on the Republican side. Is Bernie Sanders a threat to Hillary Clinton? What is his staying in going to do to her ground game?
I don't think he has any shot, but there's one asterisk, is the FBI investigation. We still have not heard from the FBI what they have found. So he is certainly going to be in this race until early June, until California. He said all the way to the convention. We'll see if he goes beyond California in June. But he also could be a bit of a pest here, where he's grabbing some momentum from her. If he finishes strong, then that's not going to look good for her. And now Donald Trump can really focus on the general election, and she's got to focus on both the general and the primary. That's a problem for her.
That's two wars fighting two fronts there. Genevieve, for pro-life people, there is now one choice, and it is Donald Trump. what does that mean if you don't like Donald Trump and you're a Republican?
Well, everybody has to get their priorities and say what matters most to me. And there will be people who say, but Donald Trump has given money to Planned Parenthood. And what I say to folks is, look, I think Hillary Clinton gets up every day thinking about how can I expand abortion rights in this country. I don't think Donald Trump does that. He's also made promises that now he is going to be pro-life. I think there's opportunities to work with him. So for pro-lifers, I think you're right. They know what Hillary Clinton will do. They know the kind of judges she'll put on the Supreme Court. With Donald Trump, I think you've got somebody you can work with, and I think pro-lifers have to consider that very seriously.
Genevieve Wood, the Heritage Foundation, Bob Cusack, Editor-in-Chief of The Hill.
Thanks.
Coming up, is there a conflict of interest for a lawmaker investigating Planned Parenthood? And lead contamination isn't limited to Flint, Michigan. We visit a Pennsylvania city dealing with its own crisis. Pope Francis in St. Peter's Square today, greeting thousands of pilgrims from throughout the world. Thank you for joining us this Wednesday evening, the 4th of May. I'm Brian Patrick. Alan Holdren, the Rome Bureau Chief for EWTN's Catholic News Agency, is joining us. Alan, what did the Holy Father teach today about the Good Shepherd in this year of mercy?
Well, Brian, he said that Catholics, Christians shouldn't be scandalized by Jesus' closeness to sinners. He used the parable of the Good Shepherd, saying that Jesus went out to get the lost sheep. He said people today should also do the same. They shouldn't be disappointed when people leave the parish communities to the point that they don't go out and try and get them back, go out as missionaries. He said that no one is ever completely lost to God.
And the Holy Father continuing his efforts towards interfaith dialogue. Tell us about his meeting with a delegation from Jordan.
You met with this delegation of people from the Royal Institute for Interfaith Studies, which was founded by a Jordanian prince just a little over 20 years ago. This group comes to Rome periodically, and they exist to promote intercultural and interreligious dialogue, peace between nations and cultures. The Pope said to them, he congratulated them on their objectives, and he said that they should continue to build this peace and to build relationships and friendships between cultures and religions in these times today, he said, when we're used to the destruction of war.
All right, Alan Holdren keeping us in touch with news from the Vatican. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Ryan.
And does a top-ranking Democrat on the panel investigating Planned Parenthood have a major conflict of interest?
This investigation has never been and has no promise of becoming fair or fact-based. It is time for Republican leadership to bring this investigation to an end.
Representative Jen Schakowsky of Illinois, a Democrat, sits on the congressional panel investigating Planned Parenthood's sale of aborted baby parts. A journalist who probed her past claims Schakowsky has a long history of running interference for abortionists. Mollie Hemingway authored that article. She is senior editor for the Federalist. Mollie, what's the conflict of interest here?
There are actually several issues going on here. One is that Schakowsky called as an expert witness a woman who's actually seemingly a close personal friend, a major donor to Schakowsky, and close enough with the family that she held a fundraiser for Schakowsky's husband before he was sent off to the federal penitentiary, which is an entirely other story.
That's another story. So who picked Schakowsky to sit on this committee or this panel, and why do you think she was chosen?
Representative Nancy Pelosi handpicked every member of this panel, and they are all leaders in the
Democrats
of the Democratic side of the panel, and each leadership position picks their own panel members. These people are known for their strong advocacy in favor of abortion rights, and in the case of Schakowsky, she's not just the leader of the pro-choice caucus in the House. Her husband actually runs messaging campaigns for Planned Parenthood, National Abortion Rights Action League. He works for the firm that does these messaging campaigns for them, and a host of other abortion rights groups.
So this is someone who is very close to Planned Parenthood in a very proactive way.
Yeah, and Schakowsky has benefited quite a bit in terms of funding from Planned Parenthood, National Abortion Rights Action League, National Organization for Women, and all these groups that are actually part of the investigation into this panel.
So with this information, what do you think is the appropriate thing to happen regarding her participation on this panel?
Well, Schakowsky does have problems of an ethics variety that she might have to deal with in the House. She should at the very least inform people of these conflicts of interest she has, that these expert witnesses are people that she has close personal ties to, that her husband works on these issues, on these messaging campaigns for the groups that are under investigation, and she should at the very least disclose it, if not recuse herself from this investigation.
Do you think that she should be kicked off the panel?
Well, that's for the Democrats in the House to decide. But it certainly, she's saying that this won't be a fair investigation, and she's proving that by the way that she's running her side of the operation.
Interesting point. Mollie Hemingway with the Federalist. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
And President Obama's trip today to Flint, Michigan focuses on lead poisoning, which doesn't just come through water. As Lauren Ashburn reports, communities struggling with lead paint poisoning need more federal attention.
In the heart of Pennsylvania Dutch country, in a mid-sized city of about 120,000 people, lurk blood lead levels among the highest in the nation, higher than those in Flint, Michigan. Lead paint, it can be a killer. Before the 70s, common household paint often contained lead. As it ages, it chips and crumbles into dust. Exposure causes severe health issues. The blood lead level in Flint is 3%. According to the Pennsylvania Department of Health, Allentown's is 22%. Mayor Ed Pawlowski says Allentown has the highest exposure rate in the state.
It's an issue that we're trying to address. We've addressed it in many different ways. We aggressively have gone after remediating paint within our housing stock.
It's a pervasive issue affecting states across the country. The Centers for Disease Control is already working with 6 states to lower lead paint levels, including Pennsylvania. But only 26 states report lead poisoning cases to the CDC. There is no national database. The CDC estimates 24 million housing units nationwide have deteriorated lead paint and elevated levels of lead-contaminated house dust. More than 4 million are homes to children. Allentown's mayor says, like Flint, his city needs federal aid.
It can't just be the local municipality that picks up that cost. They don't have the resources. So it has to be from the state level, and there's going to have to be some commitment from the federal level if we're really going to seriously take this issue.
Lauren Ashburn, EWTN News Nightly.
Up next, an investigation shows migrant children aren't being educated despite a Supreme Court ruling to the contrary. And Pope Francis greets tens of thousands at his Wednesday audience in St. Peter's Square. Thanks for joining us this Wednesday evening. I'm Brian Patrick, and in apparent violation of a 1982 Supreme Court ruling, an AP investigation reveals many migrant students in the U.S. are being denied access to public schools. Like many unaccompanied minors, 16-year-old Candelario Jimon Alonso made the long trek from Guatemala to the U.S. looking for a better life. He says, "I think that I'd like to learn English, and I'm going to here in the United States." Jimon crossed the border and, after being processed in a government shelter, was placed in Memphis where he has family. He now lives in this small home with 12 people, some of them family. But since he arrived in November, his dreams of an education have been on hold. He says the man said that they sent me to another school where the adults are. He tried to enroll in public school in January, but the cash-strapped district routed him to an adult school in East Memphis that offered English classes a few hours a week. But the English as a second language and GED programs were shut down before he could register. The state was concerned that not enough students were graduating. Jimon's experience mirrors that of other unaccompanied minors across the country. In 1982, the Supreme Court ruled that states can't deny children a free public education regardless of their immigration status. However, in at least 35 districts in 14 states, the Associated Press finds that hundreds of unaccompanied minors have been discouraged from enrolling or pressured into what immigrant advocates are calling unequal alternative programs.
So here it's a verb.
Robert Ham teaches English as a second language to immigrants in Memphis. He used to work at the adult school.
We had a few young men and women that were of age 16, and when we saw how young they were, every one of them, we told them that they needed to go back to the high school and that it was their right to go to high school, and because we really prefer them not to come into the adult program.
Meanwhile, Jimon is still holding out hope for a real education. He says he's strong. He wants to study math and communications and hopes to become a teacher. Bill Canny is with us, the Executive Director of Migration and Refugee Services for the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. How are public schools able to deny these kids an education when the Supreme Court has ruled that they can't?
Well, technically they can, of course, but sometimes they don't know about the ruling, and we actually have programs which educate public schools about this particular ruling. Many times they just don't have the capacity and are afraid to provide services such as English when they actually don't have the capacity or the funding to do it.
So the Catholic Church is very proactive in this area. What is the Church in the United States doing to try to help these families?
Well, the Catholic bishops have a program that our office runs which assists children who have been released from federal custody to actually integrate into communities. And one of the most important things is to get them into schools. So we have 225 points around the country where we have caseworkers which help children and their families get into school, get health services, get legal assistance when necessary, and help the families take care of these children.
The Church acknowledges that a nation has a right to protect its borders. What do you say to people who say that this is an issue of national security?
Well, certainly protecting our borders is an issue of national security, whether it's our southern, northern, or our airports. However, as Catholics and Christians, we couple that with the teachings of the Church, which essentially say, welcome the stranger among us, that say that as a society, we are only as good as how we help the vulnerable, and also looking at the common good. A migrant is someone who is usually left because they need to. The Church teaches that people have the right to stay in their countries. So we as a nation have to support poorer countries and help people stay, but when they can't, the Church says when they can't take care of their children and their families, when they can't feed them, or when they can't educate them, they do have the right to migrate.
Bill Canny with the USCCB, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
And thank you for being with us. Until tomorrow, for the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Brian Patrick. We leave you tonight with pictures of the Holy Father greeting pilgrims and tourists today in St. Peter's Square. Good night and God bless you.